My name's Daniel Harris, and I'm with Guy James. We're in different countries, and what are we going to do? We're going to talk about stuff. Guy, you made a comment within the Kendraio group on Facebook, and that kind of piqued my interest, and so kind of wanted to check that out, and maybe expand on that.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you want to maybe introduce yourself first and to say who you are and what you're up to? Yeah.
I'll just do a quick introduction. But my name's Guy James. I'm working with the Cooperative Integral Catalana here in Catalonia, where I live. The place that you've probably heard of with all the political problems at the moment.
I was there.
And yeah. And it's a real place for kind of P2P stuff. Open source, kind of self-management, this kind of thing. So I'm also writing for the P2P Foundation, not as much as I'd like, but because the other things take up my time. But I've written various things for them as well, and help with the curation of their blog and stuff. So sort of coming from a kind of open source P2P perspective, I'm also working with FairCoop. So we're doing like a kind of platform cooperative, like a global cooperative, trying to merge kind of cryptocurrencies and the sort of traditional cooperativism, but making it like a global thing. So the idea is to kind of take the Cooperative Integral Catalana, CIC, kind of ethos and make that global and give everybody in the world, in theory, the opportunity to participate in that kind of non-hierarchical as much as possible. Sometimes there has to be some type of hierarchy, but non-hierarchical as much as possible organization.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Great. Quick one from me. Daniel Harris, been running Kendraio for almost, is it 20 years? And the kind of the recent incarnation, I guess the miracle is we got some funding for the next 3 years from Europe, and for sort of 10 months from Google, which has been quite contentious for some people. And we're building a dashboard application that would enable an artist, a creator, to manage their digital assets and their digital metadata around their assets and their interactivity with different services. So, and it's only quite recently that I've been investigating different blockchains, because we're now, the EU project is called Blumen, and it's about blockchains. And so we're all going off and investigating blockchains, and I'm interested in looking at the kind of more diverse ones, the new ones coming up like Holochain and EOS, and seeing how smart contracts can work, if they can. And what's interesting about the approach with the app is that we're not a service provider. We don't want to own any clients. We just want it being a semantic browser to enable an artist, a user, to manage their services. And what's really interesting is every day either a new blockchain comes along or a new blockchain service comes along, and it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Are we going to have end up with 1,000 apps on our phone, many of them duplicating the same kind of functionality? Do we actually need some way of aggregating that functionality? And so that's actually making me quite excited about the app idea, is that it's hitherto, I think, service providers have tried to aggregate functionality and be the middle people for, a bunch of services. So you can get music services that will distribute your song out to many endpoints like iTunes or But what happens if you had an app that did that for you, and that wasn't then, and the app was open source and free, and it was and gave you the power to just do it yourself anyway. But there are maybe pitfalls, and you maybe highlighted a couple, and we can talk around. I'm open to talking around any aspects of those, but I'm also I enjoy a bit of criticism, because it strengthens what the proposition is.
Sure. Yeah. Well, shall I just summarize my criticism?
Yes.
Or it wasn't a criticism. It was just an observation, really.
Yes.
Of a possible pitfall down the line. It's like when you watch like Black Mirror or these kind of programs. It's kind of it's kind of looking into the future and seeing like how wrong things can go.
Yeah.
If we don't think clearly, Bruce Sterling is also excellent at kind of looking 10 years down the line, right? Well, this is going to end up in this dystopia, and if we avoid that, then it's going to end up in this utopia, or at least improve the world. But Bruce Sterling's always going on to kind of developers, like, stop just serving the billionaires' agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, it pays well, but like we're going to destroy the world.
Yeah.
These people have not got like society's best interest at heart. They don't even believe in society.
Yeah.
So so we have to be very careful, like, and look sort of further down the line and see where how these things can turn out if we're not careful. Like, if we are careful, then they can turn out very, very well.
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of open source projects have brought a hell of a lot of value to to a lot of people. And they have, avoided a lot of the pitfalls. But of course, there's always a kind of commercial pressure from the people who give you funding, basically.
Yeah.
Because why do they give you funding? Because they want something back, of course.
Sure.
This is my feeling about Google, is that I don't think anybody's invested more in open source than Google.
Sure.
They've they've done a hell of a lot of good for all kinds of open source projects like Ubuntu and Debian and all kinds of things. But the problem is that once the thing is up and running, then they tend to enclose it. They gave a lot of power to like RSS feeds and these kind of protocols. But like once they've kind of captured the audience, then they tend to shut the door. And then you're stuck inside the Google ecosystem. And so my specific comment was, if there's a kind of protocol or an open source app which is able to tag any content,
yes,
that sounds amazing in theory, because as you pointed out, it can be used to easily copyright material you've done, and say like I did this, and I have a kind of free copyright service. It could be blockchain, of course, which is kind of immutable, and it's kind of once you've said like I own this on the blockchain, then it's kind of incontrovertible evidence that you created it.
Yeah.
If you were the first person, but the problem is that of course, if anybody can tag anything, then if we're not responsible about it, then we're going to end up with everybody being tagged in any photo. So if I choose not to use Facebook, or if I choose not to use Google Plus, Google Plus hasn't really worked as far as I'm aware. There hasn't been a Facebook killer like Google wanted it to be. So what is their next plan is to kind of spread out across the internet and make anything taggable by Google.
Okay.
So this is kind of like where I can see like, yeah, okay, they're giving you the money, and they want it to be open source, and it's all great at the moment, but then further down the line they'll say, well, thanks very much, Daniel, you've made everything taggable in the world, and now we're going to shut the door and own that whole protocol.
Okay, great. I'd love to answer all of that. I'd love to answer all that. So just to be clear, we have in the region of just over 600,000 euro from the European Commission for the 3 years.
Right.
and for the 10 months we have 50K from Google. So it's a lot less from Google.
Right.
It's a great start with Google because they do offer higher amounts, and it's obviously, if we get to do this one right, then we might get onto the next tier. So, and obviously having funding from the European Commission and from Google is kind of great kudos. And actually, I'm realizing it gives us a lever to get more money in. Whereas if we didn't have any money, people are less likely to give us more money. You know, so I'm fundraising for the next 3 years. In terms of the idea, it seems to be that what Google did fund in this round, this is the Digital News Initiative, by the way. That's the kind of the stream of Google funding that we're getting. A lot of the projects were all about fake news, about finding fake news, artificial intelligence to find fake news, to root it out, you know. And for me, that's just not interesting. I'm actually not so interested in artificial intelligence. I'm more interested in human intelligence. I'm more interested in tools that real humans can use in order to gain more autonomy and power. So I'm always pitching it in that way. You know, where's the freedom aspect of this? How can we give people more power? And so the flip side of fake news is true news. And so we wanted to give people the ability to, and especially journalists, to corroborate what they're saying. So in a sense, at the moment, anyone can say anything. But what we'd like to do is promote a culture of where people are actually rewarded for being more true than other, you know, for saying more true things rewarded for truth, and truth would be ascertained by corroborative evidence. So evidence, if I say something or take a picture and then describe it in a certain way, the more information, the more evidence I can provide to back that up, and the more people that are bona fide people that can actually digitally sign that, then the more true that is perceived to be. You know, I'm sure you can actually even measure it. You probably could even give it a true number, but we're not. That's not my plan to do that. But I want to provide the framework that allows this to happen. Interestingly enough, with all the blockchain stuff kicking off, it's wonderful once you've got the stuff in the blockchain. But before you put any data in the blockchain, who's to say what is true and what is not true? And that's where I think, so when the more I think about what we're doing, the more crucial I think it is that there is some kind of truth protocol. And you look at any data set or any database, and we've been looking a lot at the music industry, and there's a lot of difference between one database and another database that are meant to be saying the same things about the same assets, you know, about the same songs. And so we want to provide kind of see if we can build a framework that allows us to compare different databases, then actually have standardized ways of conflict resolution. Because at the moment, you'd have to pick up the phone or send an email saying, hey, this is wrong. But actually, if we had a standardized way of saying, we would like you to change this data element, here's the evidence for supporting that, and here's some actual people that back us up. Here's some kind of digital signatures, either of organizations or of individuals, and here's their profiles and here's their IDs and so forth. It's like building a whole ecosystem to enable that to happen in a rigorous way. And so to come to the point of, you know, would Google or anyone take this? Interestingly enough, when I was doing research on the picture tagging, I think what Google Plus did is actually drop it. They did do it at one point, and then I think they dropped it. I think Apple do it, but only internally in photos. They don't actually use it in any social way. And I think Facebook is probably the only site that actually allows you to tag, and has quite a rigorous. they have quite a rigorous workflow around it. You know, if you tag someone on a photo that isn't yours, then probably the person who owns the photo has to agree to it, and the person who's being tagged, if they've set it in their settings, has to agree to it. And I kind of like that rigidity around it. So could we build a system where that rigidity, that structure existed? So if a journalist said, here's a photo of these people, could the people then get notified and say, yeah, it was me there? No, or no, this is totally a photoshopped fake photo and I was never there, you know. And then it gives people the opportunity to really participate. And obviously for someone like you know, a president or that, they're going to get so many tags that they'll need probably an AI to help them out, but that's their deal, you know. And I got a sense from your comment then, yeah, that could it just go mayhem and we'd have tags all over the place. And I think that is a potential, but I think to mitigate that, we would have filters. And so there are people that we're going to trust, and there are people that we're not going to trust. And we're going to trust our friends, and we're not going to trust people who our friends don't trust. And so and there'll be, you know, the more verified you are with organizations, ID is going to be really important. And again, what I love about this, that, you know, the dashboard app, it could plug into 20 different ID providers, and you could and someone comes along and you can say, well, are you who you say you are? Well, let's have a look at these ID providers and see if they know you, or give me your profile on these guys. And then I'm in a really strong position to start sort of ascertaining what the truth is out there, you know. And it's quite amazing. I've sort of slipped slightly into the ICO world and just taking a view of what's going on, and there's just so many ICOs happening. Who's telling the truth? You know, there's even, oh, that's right, there's even WordPress templates for ICO companies, you know, just like it's bam, get off the shelf, get off this. You probably can build this. There's probably a blog on like just how to put an ICO together in like 5 minutes. You just grab all these services, you know, paste all these people that are in your team into it, and you have it. And it's like, wow, this is going mayhem. 20 million, please.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's worth a punt for sure. I mean, if anyone wants to try.
Yeah, it could be. Well, we decided not to do an ICO with FairCoop because it's so shady, you know, because there are so many fake things.
Yeah,
you know, it's going to get a bad reputation. There's no regulation.
Yeah,
but the real heart of the question, I think, is who owns the data.
Right.
You know, you can make like a nice protocol, and probably a protocol is in fact the way to go. But of course, nobody owns a protocol.
Yeah.
And therefore, they're not going to give you funding to make a protocol which they can't eventually own.
Okay, so I'll answer that.
Do you see what I mean? Yeah,
I totally see what you mean. Well, interestingly enough, as with the European Commission, and I will go back to Google, but European Commission, they are funding a research project that is looking at some fundamental questions about how we can improve the state of the media industry with blockchain. And that's quite an open question. And there's a lot of different avenues, and we're just looking at different avenues. And so with the Google side, I think, for me, it feels quite wide open, and the whole selection process and everything was quite, you know, there were real things that they wanted answers, and they wanted to know what you were going to produce, and we are going to produce an app that does a certain thing and demonstrates it, and that's all good. But in terms of it felt like it was very much up to us. But I will answer the thing about the protocol. Yes, we want to. Fundamentally, I didn't want to build an app at all. I wanted just to build an open protocol. For the whole of these 20 years, I just want to build open protocols. When I started the internet company back in mid-90s with a few friends, I just saw the power of open protocols, and I'm an open protocol evangelist, like everywhere, then apps plug in, and so that's still the case. So, but the app is kind of a bridge. It's kind of a gateway to that world by demonstrating how it would work. And so if we have an app that is a dashboard, it's an app, it's local, it's hosted, it's not even hosted. It's running on your laptop, it's running on your phone. Interestingly enough, just as a little aside, the major thing that I had a problem with was I didn't believe it was possible to create an app this easily using JavaScripty, Angular technologies. There's all these frameworks, Ionic, Cordova, all these kind of things. What I wanted was to build an app that could run on all these different platforms, iOS, Android, and Windows, Mac, really seamlessly, and just from one code base. And all credit to him, Darren, our lead developer, has built this. And it's like, that was the first thing I wanted to just get out of the way. Okay, so we've done that, we can do that, and we'll be demonstrating that pretty soon. But so that was an aside. I'm kind of like dancing around like Rumpelstiltskin sometimes, going, oh my God, this is actually working. I didn't believe it could actually work. So it's an app, it's standalone. So the data is owned by the user who's running the app. It's stored locally. They can back it up to their Dropbox or their Amazon cloud or their iCloud or whatever. Kendraio is building an app that is open source and free, and we are not holding any data about that user or about that app. So there's no centralized database. There is no Kendraio blockchain. There's no Kendraio database. There's no Kendraio service as such. I think at the most we've got a mailing list at the moment. But so what you would do with the app is you would plug it into different service providers. So you would plug it into, at the moment, it's music based, but it will be photo based as well. So you'll be plugging into these different photo libraries, and we'll be promoting building a plugin system. So we're calling it an adapter. So you would be a service provider there would be an adapter for each service provider that would plug into the app. So it's local, it's owned by the user, whoever the user is, be they a photographer, be they an artist, be they a manager, be they a record label, be they Copyright Protection Society in Africa. We're looking, how can we build technology that could be really that even a country could use to help their artists collect revenue. So that's really exciting, because there's quite a few emerging countries where that technology is just too expensive. So, and the interesting thing about this is that as a user, I could grab a load of information about David Bowie's catalog, for instance, bring it into my data, mirror it into my own app, and start annotating it. And then I could offer those annotations back to the David Bowie Foundation, and they could then absorb them into their data set or not. And of course, we'd be using this kind of protocol, this kind of like, well, there's several protocols. One is like a claim request is actually saying, I want you to alter your data set. Or another protocol is like a more conflict resolution, saying, we don't agree with what you've got there, or, and then there's other protocols around business, like I'd like to use a sample of your song or a sample of or your image in my creative process, And by the way, a lot of these ideas came from speaking to Tibi in Sensorica, for instance, and the whole of the open value network.
That's what we're using with FairCoop.
Right,
using that
exactly.
same software.
Exactly. And so what, yeah, so that's great. So that makes me think, right, so let's work with you guys, because what I want to do is produce an open value accounting system that is not only 3D printing and hardware stuff, but is basically multimedia down to the sample level. So you could have a sea of samples and you can bring everything in, and then we've got that. If you look at the videos for the Kendraio app, we've got a timeline where you can have all of the individual performers in it, and they all get a credit, and you also all know exactly how much they played in it, and you can even create an automatic split based on that, an automatic smart contract in a sense. So, okay, so to clarify, the data is owned by the user. They can copy other people's data if those other people make it available, and they can annotate it, and they can offer those back. But the annotations that they make are their own. They own those. They maintain ownership of those. I think one thing that we wanted to get away from is what tends to happen is people have a browser, they put all their data into all their data to a service provider, and then they have no sovereignty over it. They have no authority over it. It's owned by it's administered by the service provider. And we wanted to sort of like really bring that back. So in terms of the tagging, the image tagging, that would be the same. Your tags would be the tags that that you say. What I suspect will happen to drive efficiency and optimization, that there will be indexes that will spring up, and whether this is Holochain or whether this is EOS or whether this is a conglomeration of everything else and something else indeed, don't know. My interest is in the user interface to create like these concepts and then plug into existing systems and new systems that come along. So if I have a group of friends that all have tagging information about photos, then we could share those between each other, or we could create a centralized server for just us that would host all of those nodes. And maybe that server would actually be owned by one of our friends, and then, but because it's a generalized system, because the protocol is understood, it's all fluid. And then you can take caches of that information, of that smaller server, and whack it into the Uber server and everything. And that's where I think Google might want to play a part, in being the cache of all assertions, of all repository of all smart contracts, for instance, something like that. By the way, that's just a concept. That's not. So if
I haven't said anything to you about that. But.
Absolutely not. No. I have no information about what Google's doing. But the point about that is, I, as the user, would still own the authoritative assertion, the authoritative data point, the authoritative tag, and everyone else who has a copy of that, of me saying that, would slave off me. Would slave. If I change that tag or want to alter it, then they would have the ability to alter. There would be a route back to find out, is this assertion that Daniel made still current? Is he still saying that? So there's all kind of like pingbacks like that.
It's kind hope. Of it's very P2P how you say it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that there's if somebody sets up their own server, then as you say, then it can be, you can just do it yourself. The problem's going to be is that people generally avoid any kind of complexity or difficulty, and they always go for convenience over security. And this is where Google comes in, because they'll say, well, you can set up your own server, and you can manage your own tags, and you can have your own index, and you can do it on Holochain. But look, we've already got it all ready for you with a Google service. You just put in your normal Google name and password. and we do it all for you. This is, you know, I mean, it's not a fault. It's not a fault of Google. They're in the business of collecting data.
For sure.
The fault is that people are allergic to any kind of inconvenience.
Yeah. Well,
so they will always go for the most convenient option. This is not people like you and me who like understand, you know, a little bit more about it, but it's like people don't understand the consequences of giving all your data to Amazon or Google or Facebook.
Sure. That's really interesting.
And they're not in the business of telling you either.
I would totally agree that people go for convenience. And what has struck me that's quite interesting around the whole blockchain and ICO thing is it's so darn complicated, but there's thousands, millions of people doing it. And so
that's true. Yeah.
People are making an effort to, you know, like juggling wallets and then moving stuff over there and, you know, changing for tokens and registering your tokens. And it's not smooth at all. And I'm not saying you're wrong, because I think you're totally right that people will go for convenience, and given an option of jumping through hoops or just going into Google, I think yes. And so I think it's incumbent on us, and that's why I'm excited about the app that we're creating. That even if look, we've got 3 years, and I know that we're going to be able to do something good. We've already actually created the app; it's all up and running, and so we've got another 2.5 years to go. It just feels like we're going to be able to produce something, and even if we're not the ones that end up producing the thing, well, at least we're saying this is the possibility. And I think that's going to be attractive for people to say, you can take back the power, you can take back the ownership, and have your service providers a bit at arm's length. And because I think service providers are still useful. For example, I think Google is still useful. I just don't think we need to give it all the power. And if they still stick to their watchword of do no evil, I don't know if that's still their watchword, but
no, they've abandoned that, I'm
afraid. Regardless, the thing that I'm excited about is, even though Google might have a complete list of all assertions that we all make because we want to upload it to the Google orb because it's really quick to search it, and there might be loads of other smaller indexes around. There should be a way of always going back to the authoritative assertion maker and saying, did you make this assertion? And if that link gets broken, then I won't trust what any of those indexes is saying about what I've said, because they can't check with me directly. And it's I really like that, because I hate Chinese whispers and I hate hearsay and gossip. You know, check back with me. You know, did I say this? You know.
Yeah. I think with the, you know, bearing all this in mind, then the users can own their data, and, you know, the possible negative outcomes can be avoided. You know, but I'm always thinking, like, with this, once someone gets funding, and of course you need funding to do, you know, anything of any substance.
Yeah.
But once someone gets funding, I'm always thinking, well, the funders want something back for it, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got a lot more money from the European Commission than you've got from Google, and that's not a commercial enterprise, so they're not going to necessarily want anything back other than the, you know, the thing itself you're building. But you know, we're always kind of thinking, you know, so and so has been funded by this, so of course it's going to get corrupted, you know, in favor of, you know, the ultimate goals of the organization that's paying for it, you know.
Well, yeah, there's always a possibility. And to be honest, if it does get to that point that we've actually produced something good enough for them to corrupt, then I'll be well chuffed.
Yeah, I'm sure. But you will, yeah. Because you'll be a multi-million.
Well, I wouldn't be, because we're totally non-profit. So this is the.
Well, it would be a big success, let's say.
Yeah, maybe I get a pat on the back. That'd be nice. But
yeah.
But yeah, the way we're doing it, I believe because we're really concentrating on it being an app and therefore owned by the user, open source, so people can fork it if they want. Yeah, the underlying owner of the open source software is a non-profit organization, so it can't be sold. It's not like MySQL that got sold to Oracle, and then they had to fork it and create Maria. And so that has happened time and time again, that a for-profit has been the custodian of open source, and then it got sold. And this is, and time and time again with good service providers get sold to a bigger service provider, and which they then kill it. And people have put their time and time again, people have put their energy into putting their content onto one of these service providers, only to have it whipped away underneath them. And it's because I've thought about this, I kind of go, well, yeah, that's what's going to happen, guys. I try not to be too I told you so about it, but that's why I've set it up like this, so that there is this. So obviously someone could fork our code and take it, and then we're going to make it a very permissive. It is already up on GitHub. We're building it on GitHub. I guess we haven't formalized the license exactly yet, but it's probably going to be very permissive. So a dirty big corporation will be able to take the code. Probably, I don't know if you can actually probably close source it and develop it from there on in. Great. And if they like what we did, hopefully they'll shove us enough of 50K to carry on the open source stuff. And I just don't see. We thought about doing it as a viral, like GPL license, and because we're integrating with. We want to integrate with a lot of businesses. Actually, most of the businesses we want to integrate with are closed source, apart from yourselves. And so I'm not an open source evangelist, as in I'm an open protocol evangelist. People can have black boxes and closed source software all over the place. I don't mind. It's what I'm more interested in is that there's a good interface, a good API, a good way of connecting in. Incidentally, do you have APIs with FairCoop, and can we plug into you? Can we be an app to connect into you?
It's being developed at the moment. Yeah,
great.
With the
awesome.
The open, what used to be called the Open Value Network. Well, it still is, but we've forked that, and it's called the Open Cooperative Ecosystem now.
Awesome.
So it's a way of paying people without. It's kind of like a protocol, so that people can just take tasks. And I mean, you understand about Sensorica. It's a similar way of doing things, but we're doing things like translations and writing blog posts, and everybody's getting paid for that.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So so FairCoop is a way of being able to pay people without needing to get funding externally. You see, because Enrique, who started it, bought this cryptocurrency, and then it was worth nothing. Basically, it was worth like a thousandth of a penny, like each Faircoin.
Right.
And now it's worth the official value is €1.20. Okay. So everybody's getting paid in Faircoin. So this is a kind of hack to get around not having to take venture capital, and then not having to. Yeah. I mean, of course, not all venture capitalists are going to try and corrupt things, but they would tend to give you less money if they don't, if they're not going to corrupt you.
Sure. Sure.
If they give you lots of money, they're going to corrupt you. So, yeah, I mean, we are kind of open source, advocates. But of course, if you want like a lot of people to use your app and use your protocol, then you can't be too purist about it. We've got these same issues, with people saying, well, we can't appear at an event with Coca-Cola, but it's like, well, if we're going to be that purist, we're not going to be able to do anything,
Right.
Because Coca-Cola exists, and so do we, and that's we don't agree with how they're doing things, but I think if you say, well, we're not going to appear at any event where Coca-Cola logo is shown, then we're not going to get anywhere, because it's
exactly.
like,
Yeah,
because they're kind of ubiquitous and all these kind of things. We have to kind of gradually replace the more extractive, ways of doing things with less extractive ways of doing things.
Yeah,
and we're not going to do it by being too purist about it, I think.
And I think you never know, and I think that it does show sometimes that when one does allow that engagement to happen, that Coca-Cola is made up of humans. I really have a big problem with personification of countries and companies. And so I really like to talk about humans within these organizations, and when the more that we can interface with the humans in these organizations, the more the organizations will change. They have to, because the humans won't be able to stay there doing what they're doing. They'll have to change. And the more we can, so I think engaging with industry is really important, and as well as recharging our batteries and sitting around a fire and omming, I think that really helps too. But yeah, I think it's about bridge building for me personally. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, for example, I was listening to a podcast. Russell Brand was talking to somebody who does this kind of can't remember the name. Sorry, with somebody who works with big corporations and tries to bring sort of more humanity into the workplace. And he was saying, well, what really struck me was the boss of Coca-Cola said to me, "I'm a mother," and I thought, well, of course she's a mother. Of course she loves her own kids, but that's not going to change their own policy. That's not they're not going to suddenly start using glass bottles again because the ocean's full of plastic bottles if it's going to destroy the company. People are humans, but there's a limit to how Coca-Cola is not suddenly going to become a cooperative, because the person who decides that is going to get the sack.
Sure.
And it's like, they are humans, and they do love their own kids, and they are probably a nice person to talk to. But it's like the logic of the market says that if you're too altruistic, you will get the sack. Your company's stock value will go down, and you'll be replaced by someone else who isn't so altruistic.
Okay.
This is the reality for me.
Sure. I think it's worth, for me, it's worth engaging. It's worth, even though I agree with you that is kind of like that sometimes the company does have a mind of its own. Well, actually all the time it does. But I'm not going to give up, in any interactions.
No, me neither.
Yeah,
no.
Great.
But as you say, the company has a mind of its own. Where does the mind come from? The mind comes from the protocols, which
exactly.
were formed when you set up the company. For example, exactly. You said, my company is going to be a non-profit. Therefore, that is creating the mind of the company. This is how your company is going to think in a non-profit way. If I say my public is going to be a public company on the stock market, it's going to think in a different way. So we have to, it's kind of like the source code of each company ends up determining how it interacts with the wider society, Like Uber's got a certain source code of just like, just destroy all the competition, make a massive monopoly, and so on. And other companies have got, more of a kind of social conscience,
For me, my way into this is not, I don't really interact or attempt to interact with company structure in the sense of thinking about how to change them. I'm more interested I'm more interested in about, and as you are too, I think, empowering individuals to make informed decisions about where they put their effort. And
absolutely, yeah.
All power.
You're not going to get rid of Coca-Cola.
Yeah, exactly. All power to us.
Yeah, But if people start demanding glass bottles instead of plastic bottles,
exactly,
then they'll have to listen. If they stop buying the plastic bottles, it's about empowering the individual as well.
Exactly,
but also giving them a sense of kind of solidarity of like, well, you know, my paycheck isn't, you know, the be all and end all. You know, this is the position they try and put you in. You've got to buy the cheapest thing, you know.
Great, that's been good for me. Has it? Have we left any stone unturned? I don't know if we have.
Well, you could go on forever, to be honest.
You could go on forever, but I think we covered the main issues, which I think was really good, and I really appreciate having the opportunity to get it down and get it out there. If we both agree.
Me too. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it was very useful. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll stop
best
recording
of luck with the project.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. And from this meeting with you, I would like to engage a lot more with the FairCoop and FairCoin and connect into your API and build an app that uses, you know, to see because what we do want to do is have that, you know, engaging with different service providers, different protocols, different services, and you know, in some ways, if we get it right, we'll end up being a really quick front end for anyone who's creating a service. And we'll just use the Kendraio app. Why not? And we'll just plug them in, you know, and it's already there.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Cool.